Hello everyone, this is Papa Smithy, and you're on Thorin's YouTube channel, so brace yourself for some banter.
Because the weird thing is, after this is how I know that, like, I actually did always hear from players, they always thought you were very good. After this, you got your break, you got to go to TSM. Like, you actually got to be in, like, one of the biggest orgs in the world. What was it like to get that offer? Is it actually dope when you get the offer, like, you know, like, fuck, I'm going there? Were you hyped for it?
Oh yeah, I was so hyped because TSM to me was like an unattainable dream when I first became an LCS player. Playing with Bjergsen, playing with like Doublelift, who was on TSM at the time. Obviously, I didn't play with him this time, but like just being on the TSM brand, that was a pretty big dream of mine, right? They were always known to be winners. C9, been there, done that. Like they're also the winning team, right? Been on TL, been on like pretty much all the top teams. Only one wasn't on so far was TSM.
Yes.
So I got that offer. I basically took it immediately because that roster sounded really good, right? The only X factor was Broken Blade.
Yes.
And Broken Blade ended up being an all-star himself.
Yeah.
Like even to this day, right, in LEC. But yeah, I mean, it was like a pleasure and honor of mine to play on TSM because I already know a lot of people on the team and a lot of people on that the org itself. So yeah, it was great.
Right, even though, obviously, in this literal split, this is when, sadly, the infamous Ezreal E moment happened. You played with Zven, and actually, listen, this is when he'd had the year before with Mithy, where, like, people actually flamed the both and, like, they got, like, their rep went down. What was Zven like to play with at this time? Because I will say, he does get bad triggered if people keep bringing that one fucking moment up, because he always says, like, I was really good aside from that, just that moment. So what was it like to play with him?
Oh, man, like, dude, I think Zven, overall, he was probably... I mean, he was different than Sneaky, but like I would say he was probably the best AD carry I've played with ever, like in my history of my career. Just because that he was so consistent, but like I knew exactly what I was gonna get with him. Like the most impressive thing to this day that I looked back upon was that he knew his matchup so well. Like especially back in the day on Ezreal, he would know how the matchup went from levels 1 to 18. Basically, and when he would want to fight, when he would want to be, when he's strong, and he'd be able to vocalize that, right? Like I can do that. I know when I'm strong, but I wouldn't be able to know how to vocalize it and interpret that to my teammates. I would just feel it in game. But to me, he was just like, "Hey, like I want to fight level 3 here. This is really good." It's like it sounds simple, but it really isn't as easy to articulate as you think.
Right, if people remember before the final, when the whole Zven incident happened, in the semis, you guys played Cloud9. And people forget this, because even though TSM Cloud has a classic rivalry, I always thought for you particularly, this must have been such a sick series, because not only was it a 3-2, and I think they even reverse swept them. But if people don't know, behind the scenes, the rumour was they were smashing you guys in all the scrims, and like everyone thought this C9 team was actually going to win the league. Like they were supposed to be the champions this time. Well, can you remember this semi-final? It must be a banger to win it 3-2 like that.
Oh, I don't recall. I honestly don't recall too much, but dude, like that series specifically, I don't remember that series happening honestly, but I do recall us getting slammed in scrims back in the day. Near the playoff time, like during the regular season, we were kind of smurfing. We like won majority of our scrims, won a good amount of our games, but then something during playoffs, we just started playing pretty badly. But yeah, I don't actually recall. Can you like jog my memory?
I could give you a few. Like I say, they win the first 2 games where they're playing like mad comps, by the way. Like it looks like Svenskeren played fucking Hecarim and like Niski's on Zoe. That Sneaky played Sona in one of the games. This was wild. Yeah, they were playing like crazy comps. Yeah.
I remember that now. That was Niski's. It was a Niski period. That's right.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, I don't know. We just like started winning. I don't know what else to say. Like they were like beating us in scrims. We were struggling a lot versus them specifically, and I think they were one of the few people we struggled against actually. And we ended up just winning. I remember playing Braum against Niski Zoe one game. I did like I won like WEQ combo, and we just ended up winning the game. And I don't know what happened. They just kind of like faltered. And
are you a guy? Here's a question, right? Are you a guy where, look, I'd love to be like fucking a Buddhist ideal, mate, and just be so serene and never, attach myself to ego and go, well, let's just all succeed and I don't hold any grudges. But I tell you what, mate, if I got kicked from Cloud9 or sold and I came back when they had like a super team and I beat them, I would fucking, at a minimum, I'd feel great inside. If not, like I might just say something to them, like, yeah, maybe you should get me or something. You didn't get this feeling? It must have felt awesome to beat them.
Oh, dude. Don't get me wrong. It felt amazing to beat C9 because we had a history of losing C9. Like ever since I left C9, I don't think I won a game until that series, honestly.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. So at the time, it felt fucking amazing for sure. But my main goal was just to win,
Sure.
like in A. So it was such a high pressure scenario where if we won this, went to finals, right? Semifinals? Yeah.
Finals,
so
yep.
going to finals and winning that kind of like overtook the feeling of crushing C9, I think, in my head. Also, it's been a minute, right? Since
Sure.
since I left C9, so
Sure. Right, obviously this final was the infamous Zven one, and if people remember, you got reverse swept in this one. Right, this one was brutal, because here's the thing, even though at the time I was like riding with TL, I mean, believe it or not, I was actually like Doublelift mate back then, but I will say, they stole this one, mate. Like, they could have been 3-0'd in this one. They could have been clapped completely, and even the way they were at the end was kind of like Locky, like they got handed it up as on a platter, right?
it was such a heist, dude. Like, let me tell you. So for the first 2 games, we kind of cheesed them. They didn't expect us to play Sonateric back in the day.
Yes.
And it was so OP, right? Like, no one could play against it. Once you get to a certain point with that comp, you just win like instantly. And we were prepping it for like weeks and weeks before the finals. We didn't show it a single time. And the only other teams that played it were C9 and TL. And so we beat C9 already, perma-banning that shit, right? And TL flipped it and opened it game 1 against us. And we insta-locked Sona, I believe. And yeah, I mean, the first 2 games are free. I don't even remember how we lost game 3, 4, but yeah, it was tough. I think at some certain point, we just got so tilted, and it was just a negative loop after that.
Right, I have to ask this question carefully, but I'm very interested to know, so I'm going to ask it anyway, even if it might be poking an old wound. Even though Zven doesn't want anyone to keep mentioning that one fucking moment, because it has been mentioned a billion times. And by the way, if people don't know, this guy won like, I don't know, like fucking 9 championships or something. Like, he obviously had a great career. That's not the one moment. But the problem is, because it was in a game 5, like I say, in a series where you're winning the whole way, and basically, it's also, he'll admit this, of all the times to sort of int, it's such a worthless int, because he just eased into a brush. It's like, he actually really just face checks for no reason. Like, it's not even a necessary move. Like, there's no upside. The downside is if you get caught, you die, right? So when that happens, right, normally you want to be, if you're a good teammate, like, hey, we win as a team, we lose. Isn't there a part of you that's like, bro, if you don't just do that way, isn't there a part? Is it hard not to blame him for that moment?
Oh, dude, like, I would never like. I know what you mean, but I never really like had any like animosity towards him, because at the end of the day, we all could have played better. Like,
That's
we all
a good way to look at it, yeah.
We could have won 3-0, you know? Like, this is where Broken Blade was completely smurfing too.
Yep.
And I remember them. Oh yeah. And during this split, oh no, it's a different meta actually. It's the next split. But yeah, during this split, we all could have played better. I think Bjerg was playing like out of his mind.
Oh, he was mega in this whole playoff, I think. Yeah.
He was playing Zoe. Yeah, he was playing Zoe, and he was completely smurfing 1v9. He landed some really clutch bubbles, but we couldn't capitalize well enough. We didn't play team fights well enough. So, like, sure, we can all blame Zven for his one fuck up, but like, what's the accountability for us, right? Like, for the rest of us, we could have played better, and that's just the reality of it, right? So I didn't really blame Jesper for any of that.
Is it bittersweet for you that you had a bunch of different finals, but you were just never on the winning side, and you even had some 3-2 losses? It must be rough, because it feels like spiritually you could have been an LCS champion, right?
I know, like that's my one regret. Like, regardless of what happens going forward with my career, is that I didn't. Even in academy, I went to finals, right? Like, this most recent academy on EGA, I went to finals and lost. But like, been to so many. I think I've been my lifetime career. I've been in 5 finals, I believe. And I've gone so close, and I've gone 2-0, 1 game away, and I just couldn't make it. And that's just gonna stick with me forever, you know? Like, that sucks. And yeah, it's disappointing, but at the same time, getting there, the story of getting there, and just how exciting and fun it was to work and play with all the teammates I played with and staff. It's that those experiences will always be with me, right?
Right, you're one of the few people I can ask this cool question to, which is when people did make it, so that they made it like Jensen, Bjergsen was like Ronaldo, Messi, or like Kobe, LeBron or something. You got to play with them both, and because you were a support, like we discussed earlier, this was the era when the support does help the mid lane and help him with the ganks or deny ganks or do skirmishes and stuff. So give me, contrast the 2 players. What are these 2 players like for you? What are the strengths? Who's better? You give me your thoughts.
Well, let's see. Like I said, I think Jensen, he is a very mechanically heavy, dominant player. back in the day, especially where his mechanics were just a step above everyone else's. I think it like evened out a lot more these days. But back in those days in 2016, 2017, he was the GOAT, right? Like Bjerg, I think Jensen's mechanics were better than Bjerg's, but the difference that those players had were that Bjerg was a really structured, team-focused player, and Jensen could have, like I said earlier, he could have like random game where he completely 1v9s, he kills everyone in the side lane, kills everyone in the lane. Like he had those like star power games. Bjerg, he had those games too, but lesser scale. But Bjerg was always consistent, right? Like you knew, like I kind of knew exactly what I was getting, and something that Bjerg did for the improvement of his team was that he was always willing to like sit with me and talk about how to play better around mid lane. He would always say like, hey, he was always nice about it, right? Like if I messed up, he would come talk to me and said like, oh, you can help me by doing this, and I'll be oh, nice, that's good, yeah. Whereas Jensen, I kind of had to figure it out myself, or like my teammates would have to help me out to figure it out. But back in the day, I was already so good that it was like natural. I figured it out. But I think that when I started losing in my career, I started losing confidence, and I started like second guessing myself a lot, and that's just not good, right?
If people remember, the rest of this year was a mess because unfortunately they had the whole thing where like there was the jungler mess where like Acadian was in for Spring because Greg had the injury, but then because they wanted Greg all along, they brought Greg back, but then he still had issues and then swapped in that. And it's like, this was a nightmare. And also, without going into it, it is years ago now, there was that mad drama that went on where, let's just say one of them had like a girlfriend and there's some massive shit went off as well. We don't need to get into that, but these things happen in teams that make things more fraught, you know. Was this kind of a clusterfuck, this team? Sounds like look, the players are good, but it sounds like a messy team, mate.
Oh man, dude, that team, holy shit. That split specifically was a fucking mess. Like, I don't think I should go too deep into it. I'm sure you know some of it too, but
if it's personal shit, I always keep it out the interview. We're just making it about you, of course. Yeah, don't worry.
Yeah. So what happened with the junglers is that it was Grig and Acadian.
Yep.
Grig, he was actually supposed to play for us in the spring split when we went up against TL in the finals. When we lost, we got reverse swept, but we ended up using Acadian because Grig's wrist was really shot. Like I remember like very very vividly that like it was tough. He was in the house with us playing solo queue and stuff all the time, but he would need me to help him open his bottles. He would need me to help.
Oh, so you
help
couldn't
open
even do
his
that. Okay.
Medicine stuff, right? And that's how like messed up his wrist was. So I felt so bad. And like, yeah, we came off of like a pretty successful split with Acadian. It would have been criminal not to give him a chance, right? It would have been like so unethical for TSM to just kick him off, even though like he waited this whole time, he was with us the whole time, gave feedback, and yeah, he was always there. So, but the thing I realized after that, well, I mean, I've always known this, but every team wants to try it. But like 6-man situations, they always suck. I'm telling you, every single time I've tried it, all it does is add pressure to the players that are competing, and the teammates that have to play around them. They are also getting like completely messed up because they're playing with 2 different play styles, 2 different players. Acadian is like a really farm heavy, like resource heavy jungle. Oh, not super resource heavy, but like, yeah. And Grig was a very like very farm heavy, very like, you guys tank the ganks, let me be efficient, I'll get all my camps and then I'll play. But yeah, very different players, different play styles. So it kind of sucks for us to play with too, right? Like there's no consistency. And yeah, there's a lot of stuff that happened during the split too, in terms of like other players, but I'm not getting into that.
The question obviously is, you were only in the team for 1 year. Like, I don't know, like at the time, not many people do 1 year contracts. So I guess you probably had like a 2-year contract and they sold you or whatever. Like, what happened? Like, this sounds like they're punishing you, mate. I didn't think you were one of the problems, were you?
Yeah, I would agree, yeah. But so after that year, it was a tough year. We know we had to make some changes. Whether I think the bot, like me and Zven had to get changed out because it was some like, wasn't like personal stuff, but just in general, like team bonding mesh stuff.
Right.
And then I think there was some other players that changed out too, but it's whatever. And then I ended up going to CLG. I didn't really want to go to CLG at the time. I was kind of given like an ultimatum in some way. But like they like kind of hid some stuff from me, like, oh, yeah, we're gonna send you over to CLG. But they didn't say that if I said no to it, then I would stay on TSM.
Oh,
I
you didn't
found
know
out
that was an
later.
option, right? Okay.
Yeah, they didn't mention that.
Right.
I'm like, okay. And I found out after the fact, and I was kind of salty, but like whatever, right?
Sure.
So I went to CLG, and yeah, I mean, that was a shit show. Like, I don't know.
I'll get to that in a second. I have a question
Yeah.
still about TSM, though, that goes like this. Again, it's so many years later now, and sometimes stories get funnier with time. They're not like, it's not a big deal to reveal, right? I've heard a lot from people, sometimes on camera, a lot privately, of people like Zven told a great one, where he said that like when Kaiser was a champion, like Regi once came in the room, and he was like, why don't you dodge the queue? And then Zven was just looking at him like, it's a fucking target ability, mate. Like, because the problem is Regi had played like years earlier, obviously, and so this is when he's just watched the game. He doesn't know the mechanic, right? Were there any funny stories like that? Because I've heard there's loads of like him coming in and giving like weird advice. And I even heard a story that goes like this. It goes that like you guys even get told by the coach and Bjerg, like, look, when he comes in, even if he says the maddest shit ever, just like say, oh, thanks, like yeah, and then they'll leave the room. Like then, but if you argue with him though, you'll be arguing for like 2 hours to say, was it like this? What was the atmosphere like?
No, it's true. So, so it's funny. I totally forgot about that, but dude, like, yeah, basically, you knew shit was going bad if Reggie's in the room because for the majority of the split, he was not involved, right?
Right.
But during playoffs, when we started struggling and it was some like internal conflicts, Reggie started stepping in, and yeah, he basically did do that. He watched our scrims a lot, and he kind of like backseated us when, like, it's kind of weird, right? Because Reggie, he actually does know about the game,
Sure,
but he doesn't know enough about the specifics, right? Like the Kaiser thing, for example, or like he probably doesn't know how the champ works completely. Maybe I don't know, but that specifically. But I remember there was a lot of fights because he wanted the veterans, like Zven, for example. He wanted Zven to step up and not just be like an ADC that is good mechanically. He wanted Zven to be a vocal leader, be like tell your team what he needs and stuff like that, right? And Zven was really, really against that because that's not how he is, right? Like he wants to be the guy that is just the late game insurance, the guy you rely on to just win you the game mechanically, and he doesn't want to put more bandwidth in other things, right?
Sure.
And that's completely understandable. I didn't think I'd want that either, but he was expecting that from him, and Zven and him had a lot of struggles and fights because of it. The rest of us kind of like tuned it out, but Zven definitely was trying to fight him back because a lot of his feedback, Reggie's feedback, was targeted towards Zven for whatever reason. And yeah, I mean, oh man, there was a lot of heated arguments, some table slamming here and there, but it's part of the process.
Sure. Right. One thing I did want to ask is, you've mentioned obviously in your career, the joke is that because you're in all these top teams, you're always going against Doublelift. He's always on TSM and then Team Liquid, and obviously he's in all the finals and stuff, right? As you say, he has for some weird reason sort of been like fairly critical of you throughout his career. But I don't get it because I always thought to myself, wouldn't you have been dope if you'd have played together? Like I think he would love to play with you, wouldn't he? Am I wrong?
So I've always had like mixed opinions about this because I think looking back at my career, I don't think we would get along that well just because, yeah, back then we were good individually, but because of how we are as players, I think the way I communicated back then, like rightfully so, would have just pissed him off. Because judging from what I see nowadays, when I watch him play Champions Queue, if his support like over communicates, he gets so triggered. I'm like, bro, it's like that's kind of how I played, And I don't think that my communication was like wrong. Like most things I said in the game were correct, but there are some things that didn't need to be communicated, and it was a learning curve into like filtering out some stuff, and I got a lot better at it. But back in the day, I don't think it would work. I need somebody who's very, very like chill, like someone who doesn't speak as much, someone who doesn't have like great opinions and doesn't have like huge opinions in game. Like they can tell me after game, but like, yeah, it wouldn't be a good combo, I think.
Right, being as, if you think about all the story we've told so far, in all these teams, at a minimum, you're a playoff team. And actually, most of the time, it's a contender. You could be in the Fat Worlds. Like, these are all things that every year are on the table. Is it hard to go to a team like CLG and then struggle and then be in like, ninth and then you go into an eighth and you feel like you're never getting the chance to go? What was it like?
Dude, I could go so deep into CLG, man. Like, CLG was tough, dude. Like, on paper, the team wasn't that bad.
Yeah.
Finn, Roxa, me, Stixay, and Pobelter. It doesn't sound that bad,
No,
right?
it's a good lineup.
Yeah, I think on CLG though, I put a lot of the onus on myself. If I had the knowledge of the game that I do now on CLG, I could have made this team into a playoff team for sure. I don't know what happened after TSM. I think after some losses, I think it affected all of us really negatively. And this is a player thing, but once you start to lose a lot, I think you just forget how to win at some point. You forget what it means to be consistent. You forget what it means to be to get to the point where, you're playing your team comp. Like, it felt like the game, if we messed up in the first 5 minutes, the game was over. And we had games and scrims where we won games, of course, but when it got on stage, all of us were just headless donkeys. We're going around and trying to fight. But the game isn't like that. The game is a lot slower, right? I think the only time we really won were when we played comps like Vi Galio or Broxa had Lee Sin. Broxa Lee Sin's insane, by the way. This guy's a fucking unit on the Lee Sin. Yeah. But the team struggled a lot because of me. I didn't play really well. I was really blessed by the org to have them trust me for 2 years, but I feel really bad for Tafo, who was my GM at the time, because he put a lot of faith in me, and I kind of let him down, in my opinion. Even though it wasn't completely my fault, I still feel like I could have carried and I should have carried. Dude, I'm telling you, if I could go back with the knowledge I have of the game now, it would have been so free. The players were good enough, I think.
It was just you couldn't bring them together, or the macro moves or something, right?
Exactly, yeah. I think if we look back, Finn was never a vocal leader. Broxa,
he's a bit of a follower, right?
I don't think he was. Yeah, a follower. Yeah, he had caps. Dude, this guy had caps, man. He can play however he wants to. And me, that was my role in the team, right? So I just felt really bad not being able to glue these pieces together.
Right, one thing I did have a question about CLG is in the later years you got to play with Wildturtle. I know this is years after his prime, etc. But actually, if people haven't seen him, the joke is he played recently, he still was half decent, mate. Seems like he's just this guy's just a talent. Who was Wildturtle? He's also, by the way, it seems like a very lovely guy.
Oh yeah, I mean, so Turtle for me, he's a really good friend of mine. He's a great person, great teammate. I think that, he's just good. He's just a good player. Unfortunately, it's the same problem, right? We just didn't get the macro down in time, and we didn't play well enough. We had a lot of roster swaps too. Pobelter was getting swapped out for RJS at times, and it was just a mess, right? I don't think there was much saving CLG, honestly. Looking back, no matter what happened, I don't think I was good enough. I don't think that the core of the team was good enough. And dude, it was I can blame anyone I want, but at the end of the day, it's kind of on me, I was brought in to be the leader. So,
by the way, being as you referenced the name, I'll ask because it's something I have always wondered about. The RGS guy obviously probably had the most epic flame out in the community ever, because he sort of he almost made himself sound like he was God, and he just invented League of Legends or something. Was he actually like that as a player, when he was in this team?
Nah, I think that's just some kind of persona or some shit.
Okay, right.
He puts himself on social media, and it's very interesting the way stuff he says. Sure. But at the end of the day, he was a fine guy. Playing scrims with them, he's pretty level headed. He has some interesting takes on matchups and stuff. I think he was very, very much into the LS church type stuff, which is fine. A lot of people are nowadays, but he wasn't that bad to work with. I think that, again, if we had a better leadership, I could have made anything happen. I could have made anything work.
Right, after this, obviously, was the period where, for the last couple of years, you've been in, well, it depends on how it goes. You were in the academy team, and then it was the challenger team, because obviously the league changed, etc. And you were there for a while in AG, so you played with Cowrie. If people remember, he came up later to replace Danny, obviously. Right, what were how would you explain this time of your career? Because it's happened to a lot of the people who've been veterans in the LCS. They don't just disappear with this team of the LCS. They go to academy. But here's the thing I've heard, and I think Darshan was the one who told me it best, is the problem is when you go down to that level, unless essentially it feels unless you 1v9 and just look so insane smurfing the gear. The problem is, because you're in academy now with up and coming, they're looking at the up and coming player. They're not really looking at you, the veteran. If anything, you sort of get stuck at that level. Do you know what I mean? Does it feel like you get elo held a little bit if you're a veteran and you go there?
Yeah. I mean, that's basically true. So my tenure in the academy kind of happened like this. I took a split off just to, refresh my mindset, like get back into it. I think my drive for the game was definitely like lowering down after CLG because who likes losing, right? Who likes losing for that long? And I took a little break, gone EGA afterwards, played with Kiari, and yeah, it's pretty true. Like when you're looking at EGA, you're not looking at me, you're looking at Kiari, you're looking at the other people on my team, right? And it is hard. It is really hard. Like Zazel did pretty well. Like he was also a veteran guy who played in academy. He played really well, won finals. I still think I played pretty well, like especially against him. I don't think he played really well during the finals, but I don't think anyone in the league was better than me at the time. Like I was, in my opinion, levels ahead. But at the end of the day, it's just academy, right? If you don't win academy, then are you actually worth your salt? And yeah, we struggled in the first split with Kiari, but we ended up doing well with the second iteration.
Right. One thing I wanted to ask was, in your career, were there any, like, obviously each time it's like an off season or a team wants to sell you or someone wants to buy you, it's not usually the case that there's just the one option. Sometimes there'll be other ones that come in, or sometimes a weird one, right? Were there any other big offers that, like, was there any other like alternate history path you could have gone this way or gone to this other team? Was there other ones that you ever thought back on?
You mean like in general in LCS?
Yeah.
Or let's see. No, I don't think so. No, nothing that I considered, because at the time, after C9 especially, that was like the big turning point where I could choose my team because I still had like the reputation and whatnot. Sure. I chose Fox just because they had the highest chance to win. There were other options. I think like I forget what teams were actually even around at the time, but I know I had like 3 offers available at the time, but I ended up taking Fox just because I want to win. Winning was everything. I didn't really care about money that much, even though money's great. Like, I always had the mentality that money will come if you are fucking good, right? So whatever team you go to, just look good. The money will come later.
Right. If I ask you about a couple of champions that people would consider like signatures of Smoothies in his career, these are the ones he plays, these are the ones he's going to be good at. Like, one that immediately comes to mind is actually a latter day champion. It's actually Rakan. Like, this is something where I thought this was always one that you had like an edge on. You had like an angles you could go. Well, how do you play a good Rakan, do you think?
A good Rakan, it's really playing on the edge. You really have to use your body to bait spells because you're so mobile. You really can't really die. You really have to know how to get vision by yourself. Rakan's really broken at base level just because his mobility, you can't really kill him, right? Like, you can see a Rakan in your jungle and he almost will never die if he's a human, right? You can get vision yourself, you can take over the whole game, just getting free information, just using your body. That's what differentiates good Rakan players from the bad ones. Like I think Vulcan and CoreJJ do this very well as well. And the one thing that makes a Rakan player good is the ability to flank too. Because a lot of times, it really is tough to get the engage from the front because people are kind of learning, right? People are expecting it to come, like a flash Rakan ulti. So you have to find positions where you cannot really, you can't really stop you from getting engaged on.
And then one that's a bit more of a weird one, because like this champion has been played in many roles, but you were one of the guys who spammed the fuck out of Karma when it was available. If you could play that, I noticed you played that quite a lot in your career. What do you think of this champion? It's an interesting one.
I never liked Karma, dude. If I'm being honest, like,
with the
Karma's
coach making you play it then?
champion.
Why were you playing it then? I know sometimes ADCs like it, right? It's like could be a lane support, right?
Yeah. Karma is like really strong in lane. Like, the laning phase is fun, but historically, I've always been more of like a Thresh, Bard, Alistar player. Like,
right.
I was my whole career, I've always been known for the roaming,
Sure.
playmaking playstyle. I first got brought up into LCS because back in the day, I was a Thresh one trick. I went from Thresh to Bard to Annie, and I had one tricked those 3 champions to like top 10, like on and off. But yeah, like Karma was just never. I had to learn Karma because in the 2016 Worlds, I believe, it was the range support meta, right? So you kind of had to learn like Karma, Zyra. I remember Sneaky talking about a story about that actually, where back in that day, my range supports were really awful. Like I said to you earlier, I was always like the Thresh, Alistar, like the engage support guy, right? That playstyle was so different than range supports. Like, I never had to play my range correctly. I never had to like space correctly because I'm just going in. But I had a really big reality check in Korea when we were playing versus Korean teams, and I was playing versus the best of the best, playing like versus Mako versus like CoreJJ, playing versus, these amazing players. They're playing Karma and Zyra for the whole career. And I got outclassed completely. They played Nami too. It was Karma, Nami, Zyra. Yeah, those 3 champs were really OP. And I couldn't compete. I remember like after a scrim block, I was so disappointed in myself because I got completely stomped. It was one day before we had to like fly to China, I think, or somewhere else. But I remember like being so depressed after a scrim block. I sat down. I didn't talk to anyone for the 12 hours for the flight, and I just sat down and played 25 games of Karma, Zyra, and Nami to prepare for the to whatever world stage we're at. And we actually ended up being good. We actually ended up like, that was the WE series, I believe. And yeah, we ended up getting pretty close to getting to semifinals.
It makes sense now that you say that you used to one-trick Thresh, because I actually noticed, even though that champion fell out of the meta like years and years ago, if it was ever an angle you could play it, you always brought it back. Like even in the later years, you'd have 1 or 2 gear. What did you like about Thresh so much?
So I think like as a young kid playing the game, I wanted to be seen as cool, Like I want to be the cool guy. So I didn't want to be the guy who played Lulu and Soraka and stuff. Like Adrian can do that, Like back in the day, he was the guy known for that stuff. But I want to be the guy known for making the plays, making like, Thresh is like the sickest champ because, you have a hook. You can make so many plays with Flash, right? And the first champ I played when I first played League 2 was Blitzcrank. So the idea of having a hook, I was also a Pudge player in Dota.
Oh, right, perfect.
That idea,
yes,
yeah, that idea was just really fun to me. So, as on top of being like a really cool champ to play, it just spoke to me, right?
Right, I want to actually ask about some of the other supports in your career and how you viewed them or what they were like to play against. So obviously, like you said before, I guess Biofrost was like a rival of yours in a way, right? Because he came after you and then everyone was like raving about Sons on TSM and he was in Doublelift. What was this guy like?
So Biofrost, I mean, I always thought I was better than him, honestly. So I always had a rivalry between me and him just because we came like around the same time. I consider him like my same generation.
Right.
And it was like me, Biofrost, and maybe Zazel, I guess. Zazel's like a little bit after, but it didn't feel like it because I kind of took the spot. Like he was trying out for C9 over me. I took the spot over him initially, and then he took it after me. It was kind of like I don't really consider him part of that group, but it was me and Biofrost. I guess like, is that it? I think that's it. Yeah. So I always had like a little friendly rivalry with him internally. I would never trash talk him or anything, but like, it's a couple years down the line now, so I can just say my thoughts. But I always wanted to beat Biofrost more than anyone else, for sure. More than Afro, more than, I don't even recall who was playing in the LCS back then, but Hakuho, I guess. Hakuho.
Sure.
Yeah.
So, okay, you referenced him there, but the other person I was obviously going to ask about was definitely aphromoo, not least because he mains half the champions you play, like those ones that you love to play, the Bard, the Thresh, etc. What was it like to play Afro, and who was he?
So, playing as Afro, it wasn't too difficult playing against him back in the day. I think he was just like consistent. He had his like pop-off games, of course. I think the thing that really made him stand out compared to other players was that he was such a vocal leader in his teams. And that's something that I modeled my playstyle with. Like I modeled my playstyle to be kind of like how High was and Afro, because they were like, known to be the most famous shot callers in the league at the time. And so I had a lot of respect for Afro, but I was never like scared of him or anything.
And then obviously you were there in the prime of CoreJJ. Like, here's the thing. I'm probably going to do a video one day on this, just for like things I've heard. Like, dude, this is one of the players where from other players, he had some of the highest ratings I've ever heard. People were telling me stuff like he had a nickname. He was called like Picasso or something. People thought he was like a genius or something because he like revolutionized fucking support or something. Well, is this overhyped? Was he actually like that?
No, this guy was just on a different level, dude. I don't know what happened. Like, once CoreJJ came, I didn't think that anybody else was that good in the league. But then he elevated the league so much in terms of supports. We all learned so much from him. Funny story with CoreJJ, actually. Before he turned into support, I was actually in Korea playing solo queue, and I knew him from Dig, right? I was playing, yeah. And he was playing ADC on Dignitas. And he added me on the live client. And he actually asked me, hey, what do you think about me swapping over to support? And at the time, I was like, this fucking idiot, you know, like support's not that easy, right?
Yeah,
Like,
sure.
and then he ends up swapping over support. He was playing on as a 6-man for I think whatever team, it's like Samsung back then, I guess. And he ended up being just insane. And he ended up going to Worlds in like a 1-year tenure of swapping from ADC to support. And went to Worlds. I think he like won.
Yeah, the year after, yeah.
Yeah, I was like, I always think back, and this guy who was looking to me like some piss low NA support player that was at Worlds, right? Like he's looking to me and asking for my advice, and then he just did it. He just went for it. I don't think I even told him that like he would do amazing. You know, I said like, oh yeah, you can try. It wouldn't be a bad thing because you know how to play ADC already, right? You know how the lane works. But yeah, I mean, this guy just took that and ran with it, and he went all the way. So respect to that.
By the way, even though it's true that some of the great support players like aphromoo and like CoreJJ did used to play ADC, I feel like people take it too far. Like, even though true, they have a sense of like what the ADC might need, right? That is one thing that I know for all my friends that are like the amazing supports. Like I was friends with people like Mithy and stuff, like some Mickey X. These are bangers, right? They do get mad triggered if the ADC or any traditional carry says that line, like, "Oh, support's easy." Like, I could probably just roll swap and do it. Like, they get mad because they're like, "Bro, you don't even know what I'm doing on the map. You don't know when I'm basing, why we do that. Like, I'm control the whole match." Like, what do you think other players still don't always see what their support does or don't get what the role's about?
No, man, like support role is actually hard. Like even champs like Yumi, right? Like Yumi, it looks so easy.
Yes.
You just go in and out and just like whatever, just do your cat things. But like the champ actually has a really high skill cap. If you play with a bad Yumi player versus a really insane Yumi player, you can't breathe. You know, you can't play the game. But most players are just awful at it. So it looks like really easy. But the role itself has so many dimensions. Like first, it's vision control, right? That's an art in itself.
Yeah.
Then it's roam timers. Then it's laning. Like laning is obviously a really strong, really important thing. And general mechanics, team fighting, flanking. There's just so many actually, and there's also just like map movements in general. I think most supports, they don't use their F keys a lot. They don't look at like how top and mid are. Even for me, I picked up that habit really late, and that's what I'm saying. Like if I knew what I knew nowadays, back on like whatever team I was on, I would be so much better because on the EGA, I was essentially like micromanaging everybody on my team because I could just see, I had a big overview of the whole map because I was looking everywhere at all times. I would be calling top dives for my top laner. I would be calling mid dives for my mid jungle. Like if I did that, man, like how much better would I be, you know?
Sure.
So that's my one regret.
Yeah, that's actually something. It's one of the saddest things is because the reason I also asked that question is I feel like because everyone treats the role like it's the least important role, they don't realize that it's actually the role that's evolved the most in the history of League of Legends. It did go from being like almost like Dota, where you're like the poor support with just wards, and you get like evaporated if one fucking auto hits you. And then later it became like a stronger role. And then crucially to me, when it got unlocked, a lot of people understand you can roll mid, but as you said, actually the OP ones were the people who would base and come top, and you just like get a gank off for your top laner or deny him getting ganked. That could be that in itself so because essentially you could like cover the lanes like a mini jungler almost, right?
Yep, exactly. Yeah, I mean, it ends up being like a little mini game, right? Because like, if the enemy support's good too, they are trying to call your bluff, right? Like, say, it ends up being very, very like very detailed. Where like, if you're basing first, then you have options to go anywhere in the map. You can go top, you can go mid, you can go bottom, and it's like a little mini game with the enemy support that like. You should go top here in 80% of situations, and if you do go top, you get a dive off. The enemy support can like either match you, or they can go bottom like normal, right?
Smap or whatever. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So if you go top and you get this playoff, then it's a big support gap, right? But the enemy support can match you, and it's really fun, right? Like it's just calling each other's bluffs and calling like predicting where they can go.
Right. One thing I wanted to ask was, are you someone where normally in your era there wasn't that much media stuff? Maybe you do a post-game interview, maybe you do an interview with, the LCS press room with fans. It's not like a huge biggest thing ever. But it doesn't seem like you were ever someone who put yourself out there. Like it's, as far as I can tell, I don't know if this is true, but I would have got the vibe you're one of those people who just wanted your game to speak for yourself. You weren't really, even though you say you were cocky, you were never like trashed. You never made a statement like, we're going to thrash them in the final or something. You were kind of a bit quiet. Why was that the aspect? Do you wish you had been a bit more out there? Was you just cool to be where you were?
I think about this every day, man. Like, that's a great question. So I really wish I was more out there like nowadays. I think one of the reasons why I don't stream so much and whatnot was because like this is not a bad thing, right? Like I was so focused on being the best and doing the best I can. Of course, I wouldn't change that at this point, but I do wish that I was a bit more vocal, a bit more like willing to do content, willing to like do interviews more and whatnot. Just basically just saying yes to everything, because I was just like, hey, if you're taking time away from my practice, I am not ever gonna say yes to anything. I want to be seen as like the hardest worker in every room I'm in. I want to be seen as a person who focuses on improvement, number one improvement, and fuck all the other noise, right? So that's always been my mentality, but I do wish that I could have balanced it more, because like at the end of the day, like I think that like if playing 2 more solo queue games really do anything for me, probably not.
Probably
like
not, no.
yeah, exactly, right? So that's like a regret I have too.
And I would also say this as well. If you notice the story of your career, some of these moves don't make sense from the outside. Like, what? He's really good. Why are they letting him go? I feel like if you'd have sort of like, if you'd had the star persona, if people had known who you were as well as how good you were, I think it would have elevated sort of your stock in a way, if you know what I mean.
No, 100%. You're 100% right. Yeah. That's what I thought about too. It's like, I could have raised my own stock for myself if I just started, hyping myself up more and whatnot, because I was fucking good, dude. Like I promise you, back in 2016, 2017, 2018, I was the GOAT, I swear. But it's no one will ever see that, because I put so much work in behind the scenes that I was hoping and praying that my gameplay would speak for itself, and it did for a little bit.
Sometimes,
but sometimes. But at the end of the day, like it's that other stuff's so important too.
By the way, a bit like the Doublelift story, I actually have a similar story myself, which is I once, like on Twitter, but spoiler, when he was in TSM, obviously, I flame everyone's in TSM, don't I? I sort of like low-key flamed you, but like it's harsh analysis. But what's mad is you did like the Doublelift. You actually just responded like in good faith, like, oh, I don't know if I agree with that. Like maybe it's like, and I was like, the fuck? Like, because I'm normally expecting people to be like, fuck off, or, what do you know? It seems like actually, in general, you actually are pretty open guy. Like it seems like you're like really, like if you think someone can make a good point, you're willing to listen.
Oh no, dude, like if somebody is right, like I'm very, very logical, right? If somebody is correct, I will listen. And I'll try to take feedback as best as I can. Obviously, it's kind of weird for like Doublelift to give me feedback too much because he's my enemy, right?
Sure.
But in your case, I remember, dude, on TSM, this is so long ago, so like no beef. But
no.
I thought you were that piece of shit, like I was on TSM and this guy, like this fucking guy is flaming my team. God. Like fuck this guy, dude. Like I wanted to flame you so bad, but like I didn't have it in me to really talk shit on live broadcast or anything, or whatever, even on social media. I was just trying to be a nice guy and trying to like, just play well. But yeah, I thought you were a piece of shit back then. Dude, right. I'm not gonna lie.
Listen,
no, it's okay.
All you need to know is when everyone's in TSM, they always say that, but then afterwards they're like, it wasn't that bad actually. And now I realise, it's more like when you're in that environment, it's like us against the world, isn't it? Especially in TSM, that is always the vibe. It's like everyone's supposed to hate us and we're supposed to win instead, right?
If you looked at the TSM subreddit after,
it was crazy,
even
wasn't
a win, dude. Yes. Even after a win, it's never a positive situation. It's always just like people flaming the living fuck out of me and like my teammates. And I'm like, dude, we just won, man. Like, chill. I know it's not like the glory days where it's like but we still won.
Yes. Right, a question I have at the end that's a bit awkward is people are going to actually assume, Smoothie, when they watch this interview, he must have retired now, right? What is your current status? Like, if there was an LCS offer, would you play Academy/Challenger again if it was available? What's your perspective on League and your future in it?
So right now, I have a few thoughts on this. Right now, I'm currently taking a small break, or a break. It's only been like 4 or 5 months,
Yeah.
But I think I need it for sure. After this last split and whatnot, I felt like my drive for the game is going down a little bit, and whether that drive goes up again, I'm not sure. I still love watching the game. I still love like talking to my friends about the game, but it's something that doesn't really sound that appealing to me right now, because at the same time, the market right now is also very bad.
It's pretty bad.
Awful. Like, dude, you're playing for pennies. Like really.
Yes.
And it's tough, it's tough out there, and maybe it recovers, but it's like I gotta think about the future, right? I'm kind of like old now. I'm like 27. I'm like literally halfway in the grave right now, So in esports at least.
Sure.
And so I gotta think about like what's next sometimes. But at the same time though, like I still have the love for the game. I still love playing it. If there's a good opportunity, I have gotten a lot of coaching offers. Like
That was going to be my
other
overall question. It seems obvious to me you would be an interesting, like at a minimum, a strategic coach, right? You could do this role.
Oh, I could do. I could even head coach. I'm sure. Like, but it's not something that is too enticing right now because at the end of the day, like esports, how long can I really do this, right? Like in traditional sports, you can be coach for forever, right?
Sure.
For a long time, it'll never go away.
Yes.
But for league and esports, it always does feel like it's fleeting, especially in North America. Maybe it was China where it's like it's popping, right? But it's tough here for sure. So I'm still considering it.
By the way, I actually hadn't thought of the angle that, yeah, obviously now, if people don't know now, without spoiling it and doing some inside baseball, spoiler, like the average person who gets paid like a wage in the LCS, that would have been like the lowest paid player in the entire league. If even those, like the joke is that it might even be like a top player in the like academy back then. Like the scale was way off. But the other thing as well, obviously it's a bit of a bomber, is it has felt like the hype and the viewership has gone down a bit, right? Like if you think of the glory days of the finals you were against TSM, it's like you said, you'd be in like a stadium, like there'd be some like crazy crowd. There'd be the TSM, like it was insane.
Yeah.
You look now and it's just in a studio. It's gone back in time almost, hasn't it?
It's so disappointing, man. When I saw that, like, what is the point? Like playing in the studio, you get to finals and you're just playing in the same place. That's so sad to me. Like we're regressing so much, and I get it. You know, that I understand the business side a lot more now.
Yes.
Because I do work with a lot of orgs doing my current stuff, but yeah, it's tough. It's tough, and I understand why it's happening, but it hurts to watch.
Being as at the beginning, you told me that story about your dad and your family and them being uncertain and even think you would get like kidnapped by ISIS or something. When Which, by the way, the joke there is I could have told your dad, like, mate, he's going to be in the computer rooms playing League of Legends all the time. He's not going to be out. So like that was never going to happen. But here's the question at the end then. What do they think about this career though? Because you had a pretty long career actually. You didn't just do it for a year or two. You made, and also during those prime days, I'm sure you did make good money. Like I bet you made banger money in Echo Fox. Like, this must have impressed them, right? They must have thought it was cool.
Yeah, so my dad and mom are actually like my biggest fans nowadays. Like, they love watching my games. Like they have their own little restaurant that they run, and they just have my games just like playing on the little TV,
Right.
and it's really cute. You know, it's like they always like my dad always calls me and starts like you know, like, why didn't you take this dragon here? Like he starts like bothering me.
Right.
I'm like, okay, and it's really tough for me to respond because my Chinese is awful. So it's like it's really frustrating, but it's like really, really like cute that my parents are so into it. But yeah, it was a struggle. Like before I started making money or being successful in this industry, they were really skeptical, as they should be, right? And we've come a long way since then. I've been in this industry for 10 years now, made a lot of friends on the way, and yeah, it's good.
By the way, as someone with your background, it must have been dope to go to the Worlds that was in China. Right? I bet that was. Had you already been before to China before? Was it like the first time? What was it like?
Like once, but it was like when I was 11, 12 years old, so I barely count that. And it was with family too. So,
okay. What was it like to go this time then?
It was amazing, dude. Like we basically had the VIP treatment, right? In Wuhan, we stayed in this hotel that was just insane. It was like the biggest hotel I've ever seen. It was like we could go down, have like a equivalent of like $100 buffet. I know what you mean.
I've been to a hotel where like the buffet was like all the world's cuisine, and
insane.
It was like, and you could never even get enough dishes. There was like an infinite amount, basically, right?
It was like free crab, free lobster, noodle bar, you know, like all that good stuff. It's like treated like kings for a couple of weeks while we're in Worlds, and yeah, I mean, but being in China in general, it's very, very like very nice because actually during I think it was 2017 Worlds where we were in, I think was it Guangzhou? I forget where it was, but one of the places, I actually had a lot of Chinese fans too, just because I was.
Oh,
Chinese,
they knew about your
like,
background, right? Okay, that's cool.
Yeah, so people like whenever I came out for an interview, I would get a lot of cheers. Right. And it was really like wholesome. I loved it.
Yeah, that's cool. Right, what about this then? At the end of your career, I want to ask this. Being, as we said, you didn't do all the media, you didn't plaster yourself. By the way, the joke is, if you just said the quotes here back and then like, I'm the GOAT right now, that would have been that would have gone across the whole internet, right?
Oh, yeah.
How would you like people to remember Smoothie, the player? What should they think of? What were your qualities? What were you good at?
I mean, I guess I want to be remembered as like, or known or remembered as like, one of the best players in the league at the time, or at a certain time, and just being a great teammate, being like a shot caller in a way, like a role model in that sense, like just kind of like that kind of legacy. Obviously, it would have been nice if I actually won something so close every single time. But at the end of the day, like I had some amazing memories with my teammates, and I still talk to my teammates here and there every day or every couple weeks too. So it's a very a lot of good memories involved.
At the end of this interview, do you have a final message for people? Do you want to thank anyone or say hello to anyone?
Yeah, I mean, thank you everybody and all the fans for supporting me throughout this whole years. I'm not sure if I'll be playing again. I'm still considering it. It's not like a 0% option, but whatever happens, thank you everybody for supporting me and my long run in the LCS.
Events come and go, fame rises and then falls away. You have a job, you lose a job. You do one thing, you have to move on to another. But one of the cool things about my career is I have my own support network who's always got my back. So I always know I can rely on support to do the work I want to do and talk the way I want to talk and not have to follow certain rules that others arbitrarily have to follow. And that support group is, of course, called the Scrilluminati, my Patreon community. This video and all the others on my channel was kindly supported by Matt Pugnaccio Rakula, Frisky, Ahmed Haju, Tobias Bernasconi, Toucan, Tosh, Jensen Go, Animosity, and you know it, always my main man Jerky's minion, rocking with me, ride or die. Would you like to suggest a topic or a guest for a future episode of Reflections or a talk show? Do you want teasers? Find out who the upcoming guests are? Maybe you want to ask me a question for my video AMA where I tend to go quite in depth, or perhaps you want to take part in one of those really long donated discussions where we talk about whatever you're into in esports. Well, if any of those perks or any of the others catch your fancy, join the Scrilluminati today via the Patreon link in the description box where? Down below.